The United States clearly is very eager to have control of the oil supply chain. As you say, we've seen the intervention in Venezuela, now we're seeing intervention in Iran.
Is the disruption to oil supplies, shipping and supply chains likely to be greater than last year's 12-day war as a result of the US aim for regime change in Iran?
Yes, I think it probably is. So this is a much more substantial conflict. Donald Trump is saying today that he expects hostilities to last for around about 4 weeks. It may be the case that it lasts for a lot longer than that, depending on whether the US meets its objectives or not. So the really big risk here is that the Strait of Hormuz is closed either partially or fully for a period of time. We think that that is a risk, and it's a much greater risk this time around than it was in the 12-day war.
Is that because the Iranian regime, knowing that the US would like to see it replaced, simply has nothing to lose here?
Yeah, that's right. So they're backed into a corner. They have nothing else to do. They throw every punch that they can. So that might include laying marine mines in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States is certainly aware of that risk, and they have minesweepers in the region. But yes, we fully expect that the Iranian regime will throw everything at them.
Should we be asking ourselves whether the US action in Iran is about oil? It wasn't that long ago that we saw the US intervene in Venezuela and is now in control of Venezuela's oil.
Yeah, I think we absolutely should be asking ourselves these questions. So control of critical supply chains is very important in the world that we now live in. The United States clearly is very eager to have control of the oil supply chain. As you say, we've seen the intervention in Venezuela, now we're seeing intervention in Iran. We've said to our clients that the best way to understand what is happening is that the United States is looking for leverage in its competition with China. So China has leverage over the United States because it controls the supply chain for rare earths. The United States now controls the supply chain for energy, and that is a pressure point that it can press in this confrontation with China.
And so do you believe that in pursuing this strategy in the Middle East, that the US is trying to frustrate China's supply chains in at least as it pertains to oil?
Yes, but it's broader than that. So Iran is effectively was effectively a Chinese ally. They're also a Russian ally. They've provided ammunition, they've provided drones to Russia for the war in Ukraine. They've provided cheap oil to China for a long period of time. Something like 90% of Iranian crude flows to China. So it's a broader, I guess, geopolitical question of whose side is who on. And if you can flip some of those chess pieces, then that's a strategic win. And what we've seen the United States do is they've flipped Venezuela, and now they're trying to flip Iran, and they're also getting the benefit of control of the oil supply chain.
Okay, so China stands to lose something from what we're seeing in the Middle East. But what about the global economy with the hold-up to energy supplies and what we know that means for inflation?
Yeah, absolutely. So it has the potential to do enormous damage in the meantime. So we have seen a spike in oil prices today, but there's been a pretty substantial pullback in the afternoon. So the market seems to be feeling a little bit more comfortable that the Strait will remain open. Now,
are you surprised by that?
To a certain degree, we're surprised that the size of the move hasn't been maintained. But given that we are seeing a substantial US Navy presence in the Strait, and at the moment, it looks like the major issue seems to be insurance rather than actual flow of tankers.
The Reserve Bank has an interest rates decision to make in 2 weeks. How do you think this is going to play into the board's deliberations?
Yeah, well, it certainly complicates the picture for the Reserve Bank because when we're seeing higher energy prices, energy is an input to all production. So higher energy means more expensive everything, effectively. So the RBA typically, when they see these supply side shocks, they like to look through them, pretend that they haven't happened effectively, and make policy assuming that it will mean revert. Now, it may be the case that if the war doesn't end in 4 weeks, as Donald Trump is hoping that it will, we might see a prolonged shock to energy prices. And if that's the case, similar to back in 2022, we might start to see interest rates rising.
Okay. Ben Picton, thank you.
Thank you.